Hey there, and welcome back to Utility Sports. And today's video, we are doing an NFL Mock Draft 2021 edition. But first, before we get into that, we have a jersey giveaway. Trevor Lawrence jersey, a black Jacksonville Jaguar jersey will be given away on the channel. The only thing that you need to enter is leave a comment on our videos and also hit that subscribe button. Very, very easy for the potential to win a Jacksonville Jaguar Trevor Lawrence jersey. So speaking of that team, Jacksonville, we are going to go with Trevor Lawrence. We think it's pretty much all decided at this point. I think the Jags are going to do their homework on all the other quarterbacks like Wilson, Fields, and Lance. But I think it's pretty clear and obvious that they're going to take the best prospect in the entire draft.
Yeah, Lawrence is going to be the number one pick, and the Jets at pick 2 are going to follow them up with another quarterback. They're going to opt for Zach Wilson. I think he's starting to pull away as QB2 in this class and really cementing himself as a potential superstar in the NFL. I think that Joe Douglas is going to move on from Sam Darnold, and he's going to look at Zach Wilson as his future quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people feel the same way, and I think the Jets will stay at 2 ultimately to take Wilson. But moving on to number 3, we have Miami, which there's a multitude of different directions that they could go. But we do think that Penei Sewell will be the selection for them. Obviously, there is a little bit of a need at wide receiver, but I think if you can get an ultimate franchise tackle, a guy who is really, really great in the run game currently and has the potential to be great in the pass game, I think this is a can't-miss prospect at this spot.
Yeah, definitely. Miami needs to improve their run blocking and also their pass blocking. They got to keep Tua Tagovailoa healthy, and getting the best offensive tackle in the class is a good way to start doing that. At pick 4, we've got the Atlanta Falcons here. They're a team, they're going to be looking at quarterback in my estimation. They're a team, they have a whole bunch of needs. I think that they underperformed last year, though. And I think having a pick in the top 5 here gives them an opportunity to look for their franchise guy. And that's going to be Trey Lance here out of NDSU. The kid's young. A lot of his film came when he was a 19-year-old, played very well for NDSU, only got one showcase game this year, didn't look good in that game. But I think Atlanta can sell themselves on what his frame looks like, what his mobility offers, and what his talent as a passer is as well.
And ultimately, I think this pick stems from the whole idea that Trey Lance kind of processes the game a little faster than maybe a Justin Fields. I know a lot of people do like Justin Fields, but there's a lot of criticism for him as a prospect. And it's very possible that he's actually the second best quarterback in this class, but it's going to take a lot of infrastructure around him. It's going to take really, really good coaching because I think he's just not to the point of a Zach Wilson yet. And, it's possible that Trey Lance is selected before him. Moving on to pick 5 here, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think for the Bengals, you want to be sure that you're great up front. Rashawn Slater is a really, really good piece in doing so, just considering they already have Jonah Williams. They can come back and take Slater. I know a lot of people think this might be high for Slater, but he's the best pass blocking offensive lineman, in my opinion, in this class.
Yeah, he definitely is. And he's coming in protecting their former first overall pick, Joe Burrow. That is a multi-million-dollar investment that you need to protect. Rashawn Slater is going to do a great job in helping him stay healthy in the future. At 6, now we're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles, and we're actually going to go with Jamar Chase here out of LSU. Last year, there was reports that the scouts wanted Justin Jefferson, the LSU product. They passed on him for Jalen Reagor. This year, they are going to go with the LSU product and Jamar Chase. He even outshined Justin Jefferson last year. We saw how great Jefferson was in the NFL. Jamar Chase should be the no-brainer number 1 wide receiver on the board for a lot of different teams.
Absolutely. They're not going to miss on the pick this time around. So they do get their guy in Chase. And now we have Detroit, which they have a lot of question marks at that wide receiver position. Obviously, Kenny Golladay is a free agent. Marvin Jones is a free agent. So you have to solidify that receiver position once again. And you take Jalen Waddle, who at the time when he and Devonte Smith played together at the University of Alabama was the better of the two. I think this is going to ruffle a couple of people's feathers, just considering that Waddle was not the Heisman winner, but I think Detroit's going to go for the ultimate upside with Waddle's athleticism.
Right. Then this isn't too far-fetched either. Last year, Henry Ruggs was the first wide receiver off the board, and during the season, no one would have really predicted that until he had ran his 40 time. Scouts, executives really prefer to go with the potential route a lot of times over the production. Jalen Waddle does have that potential. Now at pick 8 here, we're Carolina, and Justin Fields is still sitting here. He's going to be the selection here for the Carolina Panthers. They've been trying to be aggressive here in the trade market. They had made a big push for Matthew Stafford. I think that they're going to be a team trying to call the New York Jets to move up to pick 2, maybe for Zach Wilson. They're going to be looking a whole bunch of different ways for a quarterback. Justin Fields falling to 8 is a good selection for them now.
I think they're pretty happy about that because at one point, Justin Fields was considered the 2nd overall pick. Now his stock is taking a little bit of a hit. But at that point, I think they're really, really happy with the upside potentially. And they're one of those teams that have the infrastructure around him. They have Christian McCaffrey, they have DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. They have a lot of nice receivers, and ultimately they're kind of a tight end away from having a really complete offense in that sense. At number 9, we have the Denver Broncos. We are going to have Patrick Surtain go. For this team, it's all about preference. 9 and 10, it's going to be corner either way, but it's all on preference for Denver. And I think that they could really look for a press heavy guy, a true man-to-man corner in Surtain.
Right, and Denver's going to really be the team that gets to decide which order they go in here as they go with Surtain now. At this point, then the Cowboys come back and grab Caleb Farley. It's very likely that we see these two guys go back to back here in the NFL draft. Surtain goes first this time. Farley follows him up. But don't be surprised on draft night if that order is reversed as well, with Farley going 10th to the Dallas Cowboys in this mock draft.
So at 11 here, we had a little bit of a shakeup just considering that Waddle went 7 to Detroit. But now we're going to be going back to that receiver position. Devonte Smith out of the University of Alabama will be the pick, the Heisman winner. It's very possible he does not slide this far, but we did not think Henry Ruggs was going to be that first pick last year of the wide receiver group. Ultimately, he was. A lot of it stems off of, freakish athleticism for a guy like Jalen Waddle, but Devonte Smith is as good of a receiver as it gets, though.
Yeah, he definitely is. And now the 49ers sitting here at 12, they've got a little bit of a question for them. In recent mocks, we've been looking at the cornerback spot. Maybe they feel like they can afford to wait until the second round to really address that. And here at this point, we're going to opt for Mack Jones, the quarterback out of Alabama, was a Heisman finalist. And the reason we're opting for him is it sounds like the New England Patriots are going to be very aggressive in their pursuit of Jimmy Garoppolo. And it also sounds like the San Francisco 49ers aren't content with Jimmy G. There were reports linking them to Teddy Bridgewater and various other QBs, including Kirk Cousins. It sounds like they want to maybe reset their quarterback position, and there's no better way to do that than getting a young guy in the draft who's going to be cheap and under team control for 5 years. Here they grab Mack Jones, able to continue to build up that roster around him with that saved money from Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's where they're moving going forward.
Absolutely. I think that pick's going to surprise a couple of people, but we do believe Mack Jones' stock is continuing to still rise throughout the draft process. At 13 here, we have a guy that is still on the board that we believe is the top 5 true talent. That is Kyle Pitts from Florida. Just an extremely explosive, great vertical threat tight end, a guy who has a wide catch radius. And I think ultimately Justin Herbert and Kyle Pitts pairing would be very, very dangerous for years to come. Obviously, they don't have Hunter Henry right now. They have to re-sign him. But if they can't get something done, because I think he will get paid more elsewhere, you could expect this pick.
Right. This is an A-plus scenario here for the Chargers. Hunter Henry is going to have a real market this offseason from teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars, Cincinnati Bengals, and many others. Kyle Pitts here falling to 13. They're getting a guy who's top 5 in the class. He's young. He's dynamic. He's a great playmaker, and he's going to fit right next to Justin Herbert as the long-term answer there. They do need to improve their offensive line, but you can't pass on a generational guy like Kyle Pitts here at pick 13. Now at pick 14, we got the Minnesota Vikings, and offensive line's a real big need. However, we have Micah Parsons here on the board. There are some reports that Anthony Barr might not be a Viking for the duration of his contract. Whether it's this offseason or next, I could see them moving on from him to save some money on the cap. He has a huge cap hit number. And really looking to build that team out, they might need to save some money in a few different areas. Moving on from Anthony Barr could be one of those ways. Micah Parsons fills his shoes perfectly. And even if Anthony Barr is back for this next season, you could play him in your 3 linebacker system that Mike Zimmer loves to run.
Absolutely. And with the absence potentially of a guy like Eric Wilson, we could see that selection even more likely. But I think that is a great move for Mike Zimmer's defense. At 15 here, we have the New England Patriots. And this is one of those surprise picks because we have not seen Christian Barmore go this high in our mocks the entire season, but I think he has been gaining some traction. Ultimately, New England needs to get better up front, especially on the interior of their defensive line. And that's why we could really see Christian Barmore going here. Extremely disruptive in the run game. He's not a great pass rusher, but I mean, he is going to be an ultimate run stuffer for New England.
Yeah, I think he's definitely put himself as the top interior defensive lineman in this class. I think he's kind of pulled away from some of the other guys, which puts a real premium on him in this draft. If you draft him, you're getting for sure the best interior defensive lineman in New England. They really need someone who's going to be disruptive up there in the middle of that defensive front. And I think Barmore is a great selection for them. Now at Arizona here at pick 16, they grabbed J.J. Watt in free agency, kind of address that edge position a little bit. Having Chandler Jones back next year as well will really help them out in that area. So now it's about going into that secondary, filling in that position. It's going to be J.C. Horn here. He had been going earlier in some of our mock drafts. He falls now to 16, and he's a perfect fit there for Arizona. They need to grab someone who can be an outside corner, and J.C. Horn comes in and is the perfect fit in Arizona.
Absolutely. I think Horn fits in really, really well with Arizona. They have to get some more bodies in that secondary, especially in that corner room. Obviously, they have Byron Murphy, Pat Pete, but you got to add another guy into that mix. And now at 17, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. And Las Vegas really will be looking, I think, on the defensive side of the ball, whether it be on the defensive line or on the second level of that defense at the linebacker spot. And I think ultimately that's where they're going to go, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, just considering that they do need a guy in the mix. He's a true tackler. He's a guy that can really go sideline to sideline, arguably could be evaluated as the best linebacker in the class, but I think he's very, very close with Micah Parsons in that respect.
Yeah, I definitely think that he's going to be really impactful there in Las Vegas. At pick 18 now, we have the Miami Dolphins, and they're a team that's a little interesting to me. They decided to move on from Kyle Van Noy. They're looking for trades for him right now. Sounds like they're ultimately going to have to release him, however. And that kind of surprised me because he was very productive last year in the 14 games he played. Had a really big impact on that Miami defense under head coach Brian Flores. Only played one season there. Now it's going to be back to the drawing board for them. Do they look at linebacker or do they look at that wide receiver position that's so badly needed for Tua Tagovailoa? At this point, we're going to opt for that wide receiver, and it's going to be Kadarius Toney here out of the University of Florida. He's going to be a guy that plays himself up into the top 20 more than likely, just with what his athleticism offers. He's very quick, fast twitch receiver, can get off the line of scrimmage quickly, can work across the middle of the field, and is going to be really good after the catch in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. The after the catch part is what truly separates him from a lot of the receivers. Him and Jalen Waddle really excel in those departments. I think that Kadarius Toney has been undervalued in a lot of these mock drafts all the way leading up here, and we're finally starting to see some justice with Toney going in that top 20. At 19 here, we might have a little bit of a run on tackles, and Washington is going to be a big part of why that happens. We think that they could be going Christian Darrisaw from Virginia Tech. Obviously, whoever the next quarterback is, you want to make sure they're protected up front. Obviously, Washington's going to have some tackle issues. They already do currently, but along the offensive line, you also might be losing Scherf. So you really have to protect yourself from having a disastrous offensive line if that were to happen.
Yeah, Washington's really going to have to focus on that front five here for their football team. Ron Rivera is going to need some protection for whoever that franchise QB ends up being there in Washington. And Darrisaw is a great starting point for them to build up that offensive line. At 20, we've got the Bears, and like you said, a run on tackle here possibly. Samuel Cosmi out of Texas goes next here at pick 20. I think that he's going to be a good selection for them. They really need some stability. I could also see them looking at Elijah Vera-Tucker at that point, giving them a real interior and offensive tackle option as well on that line. But I think Cosmi here is the stronger left tackle, and I think that's why they go with that direction.
Absolutely. And at 21, we have the Indianapolis Colts, which they have their quarterback in Carson Wentz. They have a pretty good offensive line already. And I think the reason that we are going to have Rashad Bateman go is not only the value. I think Rashad Bateman very, very well could be a top 20 player in this class, but also there is pretty good depth at that tackle spot. We see some of the top ones already go. And we think Rashad Bateman is a phenomenal talent coming out of the University of Minnesota. He is in 2019, had the most yards per catch. I think he was actually second in the nation in that regard, but true big time playmaker for Indy.
Yeah, he really is. He comes in, and there's some question marks about what that wide receiver room is going to look like. T.Y. Hilton, he's a free agent. He might find another destination. Indianapolis needs to build up their offensive firepower, and Rashad Bateman's going to go a long way in helping Carson Wentz really succeed there in Indianapolis. Now at 22, we have the Tennessee Titans, and they're going to be looking along the defensive edge position, specifically at someone who can get after the quarterback and also be impactful in the run game. And I think that's going to be Jalen Phillips here out of Miami. He had a ton of tackles for loss for Miami, and I think he's going to be a guy who can do it both for them. They've really been badly searching for that for the past few years. Jadeveon Clowney didn't work out. They've made some other moves in years past that just didn't really lead to a lot of success along that defensive line. Now getting a young star edge rusher in the draft in Jalen Phillips is a good starting point for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jalen Phillips' stock has been rising drastically just with the opt-out of Gregory Rousseau. Really opened up the door for him in this year's draft, and he played himself into a first-round pick. Obviously, he plays both the pass and the run game very, very well. So love that selection for Tennessee. At 23 here, we're going to have a little bit of recency bias. We're going to have Eric Stokes go. We've had Eric Stokes go anywhere from here to 32 in a lot of our mock drafts. But now he really solidified himself, in my opinion, as probably a first-round pick for sure, but maybe even a top 25 pick, just considering his 4.24 speed that we've seen But for me personally, I think the Jets need a corner really, really bad. And we could see them double dip in the draft and end up getting another one.
Yeah, his 40-yard dash time is going to really propel him. I wouldn't even be surprised if he ended up being a top 20 pick, just with how some executives, GMs look at that as a potential move. Eric Stokes, really, the tape doesn't necessarily suggest that he's a top 20 player in this draft, but that 40 time is going to go a long way in helping him solidify his draft stock. Now at 24, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. They finalized their contract extension with Ben Roethlisberger, added an extra year onto that deal, opened up some money for this year. So now it's going to be about trying to find other ways to save money and also improve this football team. And Najee Harris is sitting here. He is the best player on the board at this point, and they're going to pull the trigger on him as their franchise running back moving forward. You get 5 years of team control on a good young running back, someone who can run with power, run with agility, and I think he's going to be a great option there in Pittsburgh.
And some of those great Pittsburgh offenses had that three-headed monster of Big Ben, Le'Veon, and Antonio Brown. Obviously, they don't have two of those three killer bees, but at this point, Najee Harris would be a really, really good acquisition. Not so much pressure on Big Ben to constantly be throwing the football. At 25, we have Jacksonville. I think their biggest need right now is at that safety spot. They have the worst safety room in the league. And they go ahead and take Trayvon Merrick, who really can play up in the box, but he can also play that deep third of the field. And ultimately, Jacksonville doesn't really care about value at this point. You could potentially get Merrick in the second round and shouldn't have to worry about some of these teams ahead of them. But you also have to make sure at the same time that you do get that best safety in the class.
Yeah, they go ahead and grab him there. This is a really big positional need for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they are much improved after draft night when grabbing Trayvon Merrick at pick 25. At pick 26, we got the Cleveland Browns here, and they're going to be looking in two different places, probably really hard at the linebacker position and also at that edge spot. And I think that at this point, they're going to opt for the edge. They're going to go Gregory Rousseau out of Miami, the second edge out of Miami we had go here in the first round. And he's got some real potential in the NFL. And they have the luxury of having Myles Garrett on the other end. You need to now add in a guy who's going to see a lot of single pass blocking snaps. And he's going to have a chance to really develop as a pass rusher there in Cleveland. Sure, he's a little raw at this point, but his physical frame, what he can offer in terms of potential, is a no-brainer here for Cleveland at 26.
He is extremely raw as a pass rusher, doesn't have a lot of moves in his arsenal, but a lot of times he can win with power. And to be able to just bully a lineman straight up and have the production he had was insane. If you can see him refine his skills a little bit more and, really add some moves, I think that Gregory Rousseau is a home run pick at 26. At 27, we have Baltimore, and we think they are going to go in the same direction that Cleveland went, and they're going to go with Kwity Paye, who's an athletic freak, but at the same time, you'd like to see him add a little more moves. This is not the best edge class that we've seen in years, but ultimately, Baltimore needs to make sure that they have that edge spot really fixed, just because we're not sure about the status of Matthew Judon moving forward. So you got to get another edge.
Yeah, they definitely need to address that position. And Kwity Paye is going to come in, and this is something we see Baltimore do. They address the positions of need before they become problems. Baltimore is going to stay very competitive with this acquisition of Kwity Paye on draft night. At 28, we got the New Orleans Saints here, and they're going to be looking at that cornerback spot. Marshawn Lattimore, very likely he could be on his way out via trade this year. Also, Marcus Williams in their safety room is going to find his way out. He's a free agent. They need to badly address that secondary and save money doing so. Grabbing Aaron Robinson here out of UCF is going to be the direction that they take this team. And I think he's going to be a solid piece. He can play in the slot. He can play a little bit on the outside. And I think he gives you some good versatility there in New Orleans moving forward.
At 29, we have the Green Bay Packers, and ultimately at Green Bay, you have to be looking at that offensive line very closely, just considering that they lost Brian Bulaga just a year ago. Obviously, Bakhtiari had the big injury, so that old line's been kind of banged up and missing some pieces. So you do have to be prepared to get a guy with a lot of versatility. And we are actually going to go with Elijah Vera Tucker, just considering he does have the versatility to basically, I think, play all across the offensive line. I know Sheldon's talked about his versatility as a guard and tackle. So getting Vera Tucker here really gives you a lot of options and how you want to utilize him.
Yeah, I think he's the perfect fit there in Green Bay because he's a guy who's going to be able to be that short-term replacement for David Bakhtiari. And then you can find a different spot for him along the offensive line. He's going to be able to play all across, and I think he's a great fit there in Green Bay. Now at pick 30, we have the Buffalo Bills here, and they're going to be looking at the linebacker class extensively, doing their research there. They're losing Matt Milano this year in free agency. It's very hard to see a reunion, likely with the kind of contract he's about to get, probably with his play this past year. So in doing so, they're going to go and draft Zaven Collins out of Tulsa here. I think he's the best fit into that defense. They need someone who's going to be a playmaker, who's going to be able to play physically. And we saw how much of an impact he had there at Tulsa this past year. Buffalo's looking for another big impact guy, and Zaven Collins is going to be that for them.
Absolutely. And I think Zaven Collins really fits in well to that Buffalo culture. Big hard-nosed guy. But at 31, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think they will be looking along that offensive line. But just considering some of the depth that we have seen on the offensive line, they might opt to wait for that. They do need a wide receiver very, very badly, just considering they only have 2 under contract next season. And of course, they're going to grab Terrace Marshall Jr. He is a true red zone threat. Obviously, with the current wide receivers they do have, they are not true red zone threats. Travis Kelce is, but you would like to obviously have one guy that can line up outside, win in the red zone, and that's what Terrace Marshall can do.
Yeah, I like that there for Kansas City. And here at pick 32, the final pick of the first round, I'm actually going to opt for Joseph Osai out of Texas here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And my reasoning for that is they need a guy who's going to be impactful in the pass rush game, because right now they've got some contract situations that are a little difficult to see how they come out of this unscathed and keeping all their players. Chris Godwin's going to be a free agent. They also have to look at Shaq Barrett and Levante David. Those are 3 big money type of guys for them that they want to keep all of those guys. It's just going to be tough to do so. Ndamukong Suh's going to be on his way out more than likely. It's going to be about trying to find young talent who can come in and replace some of these guys long term.
Absolutely. And that's the hard part about winning the Super Bowl is a lot of recognition goes to the entire team. And obviously, especially since they have a lot of guys that aren't under contract next year, they are definitely going to be losing some big key pieces. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Please hit the like button if you did enjoy the video. Also, if you love NFL mock drafts, please subscribe now. We will be pushing out more and more NFL draft content leading up to the draft this year. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.